If you have any, if you have any question, always feel free to ask. If something is not clear enough, if you did not understand something or need me to repeat something, feel free to do so. Okay. All right. Today's lesson is titled Film Audio, and this lesson has many videos that you were supposed to watch. Very interesting videos. And we have a statement here by Ryan Connolly from Film Riot. This is a person you should be already familiarized with. And he says that bad video is forgivable, but bad audio is not. And you're probably scratching your head and wondering, wait a minute, this is a cinematography class. And when we talk about cinematography, it's mostly or almost, or not, if not entirely, visual, is it not? Well, no. As you know, film is not only a visual experience, but it's also an auditory experience. Back in the days of silent cinema, even in silent cinema, because there were no recordings back then, you had a guy playing a piano to accompany the film that was being shown. So it's important to understand that sound is usually the most neglected area of filmmaking, especially in amateur filmmakers, because of this erroneous perception, this perception that film is essentially visual, but that is not correct. It might be mostly visual, but it is also auditory experience. You see and hear movies. So paying close attention to sound is very important because it is part of the whole package. It is part of the experience. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to detect if the soundtrack is not good, but it is something that at least at a subconscious level you can perceive, like something is not quite there. But a soundtrack can be as complex and demanding as an image on the screen. Now, when we talk about the soundtrack, I'm talking about everything that you hear. When you're watching a movie and you're hearing a movie at the same time, that soundtrack is made of three basic components. Number one, it has the human voice. The human voice has mainly to do with the dialogue, what the actors are speaking, or they're singing what they're singing. Sound effects is any other sound that is not the human voice or music. That would include the sound of a breeze, the sound of the wind, the sound of footsteps on grass, or the sound of footsteps on concrete, a gunshot, uh, anything that is not the human voice. And also, you have the music. Now, sound plays a very important role in the film experience. And I think that we can state four important things about the role of sound in a film. Number one, that sound has a narrative role. When we talk about narrative, what does it mean? Well, the word narrative is a word that you hear in literature or in reading. What does narrative mean?
Narrating a story.
Narrative is the same thing as
Ah,
telling a story. When you're watching a movie, a story is being told. So, sound or the soundtrack helps tell the story and move the narrative forward. Every time an actor says something in a dialogue, that helps move the story forward. It helps in the narrative flow of the story, which is supposed to be moving forward, right? So that's one of the roles of sound. It helps tell the story. You hear what they're saying, and that helps tell the story, it propel the story forward. Another role that sound has in film is that it has a subliminal narrative role. Now, when we talk about subliminal, we're talking about things that your brain can register, that your mind can perceive, but not at a very conscious. It's like you're not like really paying attention, but somehow at an almost subconscious level, your mind, your brain is registering it. Like, for example, you're watching a movie where a woman is being chased through the woods and you're focusing on her performance, maybe the look of fear in her face and her eyes, uh, her panting, her wild eyes. She's looking backwards. They show some probably some movement behind her, but you're probably not paying attention to her footsteps on dry leaves, on the twigs that are in the woods. You're not paying attention to those things. But if those things were absent at a subconscious level, your brain will tell you, wait a minute, something's wrong here. I'm not quite catching what it is, but something seems to be wrong here. And the reason for that is that, remember, we are mostly visual. When there's something that is visually off, you can detect it almost immediately. But when it has to do with sound, it's a little bit harder, but it still registers because you have ears, don't you? So it's important that we keep in mind that when you're building your soundtrack, when you're making your movie, that you pay attention to those little sounds that maybe people are not going to consciously pay attention to, but that if they are not there, they're going to make your movie suffer because something's going to be off. Do you understand what I'm saying, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you're in the woods,
Yeah.
let's say you're in the woods in a forest, what sounds, if you have ever been, because I don't know, you guys are very recluse and you guys like to stay in your room. When I was your age, that was punishment for me. I like to be out there, hanging out with my friends in the street, in the woods, climbing mountains and trees. But if you have ever been in the woods, what sounds do you associate with being in the woods?
I guess birds and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Water.
but what? What makes up those sounds of nature?
The
That's
wind
one.
hitting the trees.
What
The
else?
animals,
Like what? What animals?
the
Tree.
cookies,
The
the
snakes, I
birds.
guess.
The water
Birds?
sometimes as well.
Maybe the chirp of birds. Maybe the rustling of the winds. Maybe if you have a character walking through the forest, the footsteps on twigs, or when you are walking through the woods, sometimes you have to push brushes and things, and that makes a sound. The sound of brushes against fabric, the fabric of your clothes. All those things that you would expect to hear, you have to work on when you're building um, your soundtrack, guys. Because if those sounds are not there, something subconsciously is going to register like it's off. Maybe at the moment you cannot put your finger on it. It's going to be a little bit off. So working on sound is not unimportant. Okay, maybe some of you are not expecting for me to talk about sound in a cinematography class, but sound is very, very important. So that's another role. Another role. Oh, let's not forget the music, right? The music in the background is also something that is very important, not only in a subliminal role, but also on the emotional sound equation. Um, so sound, your soundtrack also has an emotional role because I don't know if you know it or not, but why? Can anybody tell me why do you think there is music in movies? Why?
So the movie don't be boring to make it more tension.
To make it more
Uh,
dramatic.
To express a feeling.
Let me ask you a question. Does music make you feel things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Depending.
Have you felt happy hearing music?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
and sad
Yes.
Yep.
too.
Sad.
Have you felt sad?
Yes.
Have
Yes.
you felt fear?
Yeah. Kind.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Music, guys, music is very emotional.
Uh-huh.
Music has a great emotional impact. So that's why music is an important part of a soundtrack. I mean, I've seen movies with no music, believe it or not, and they have worked. I remember seeing a few years ago a horror movie called The Blair Witch Project, and that movie has no music, and it works very well. It only has music at the end in the credits. That's the only part, but for the entire movie, no music. But that rarely works. In that movie, it worked. But I would say that music is very important. I need to have music in my movies. When I make a movie, one of the very first things I think about is the music. Sometimes I even use the soundtrack to help me edit the movie. That's how important it is for me, right? So when you put music in movies, guys, depending on the type of story that you're telling, depending on the genre, basically the music serves as an instruction guide for the audience on how to feel at a particular moment. You understand what I'm saying? Music basically tells you, feel this way now, feel fear now, feel happy now, feel exhilaration now, feel hope now. That's what music does. And have you heard the term melodramatic or melodrama?
I've heard it, but
Yeah.
like I don't know what it means.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now
Ah,
what it
yo igual lo he
means.
escuchado, pero no sé.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now what it means. Melos is the Greek word for music. So melodrama means drama with music. And what is the most melodramatic thing in the world? Telenovelas. They overact and then they put that music to like make you feel shock in a precise moment, or feel doubt, or feel exhilarated, or feel sad, or anger, or whatever emotion it is. Telenovelas are highly melodramatic. They make extensive use of music. I would tell you, they go sometimes overboard, right? But that's the importance of music, guys. Music is very important. Have you seen Jaws?
I seen the trailer of it, but not the movie though.
Guys, it's one of the most famous blockbusters of all time. If you like thrillers, uh, they don't get better than Jaws. You know, when I saw Jaws, how old are you?
13.
Well,
13.
that
Well,
I was like 12 or 13 when I saw Jaws for the first time. It really scared me. And the soundtrack had a lot to do with that. Like, and most people that have never seen Jaws, they know the Jaws music. Does anybody know the Jaws music?
no.
No, like it's what you know what a
No.
cello. You know what a cello is.
Yeah, I know it. I know it. Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it. Give me give me a second. So
Oh yeah, I have.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard it.
yeah.
I've heard it.
you have heard it.
Yeah.
You have heard it.
I
Okay,
saw it
another
when I
role
was 8.
is a grammatical role, and you know that in grammar, you know when a paragraph ends and a new one begins, right? When you're reading, you see that there's a space between paragraphs. You see that there's an indent to let you know that a paragraph is beginning. And we do the same thing with sound. Sound has a grammatical role. It lets us know what's happening with the continuity. Sound provides the continuity. just the same way that spaces and indents do it in a paragraph. They let us know that the movie is moving forward when a part has ended and a new one is beginning. So all those things are very important to keep in mind regarding the role of sound. Sound is very important, guys. Now, when do we begin working with sound and pre-production? The composer usually makes most of the music during post-production, but they need to begin working on it in pre-production, um, because it even helps when you're shooting the movie. Now, what is sound? Because we've been talking about sound a lot. Sound is a form of energy, and it's a form of energy that moves in mechanical waves. A mechanical wave um, needs a medium to move. What's that medium? Matter. You know what matter is, right?
Yes.
Yes.
You know that they taught you in science that matter has four states:
Yeah.
solid, liquid, gas, or plasma. And sound needs matter to move. Sound cannot move like other forms of energy through the vacuum of space, like light and other forms of energy. And sound moves like as a vibration. It disturbs the molecules that are in the air and makes those molecules bump into each other in succession until it reaches your ear. It's like when you throw, have you ever thrown a rock into a puddle of water?
Yes.
Yeah.
You see those waves rippling.
Yes.
Imagine that ripple moving, but in 3 dimensions instead of two, and you have a pretty good idea of how sound moves. Where do you think sound travels better? Through air, water, or I'm sorry, through a liquid, through a gas, or through a solid?
Liquid.
Liquid.
Why?
Gas.
Gas.
I
Okay,
think it's solid.
remember that it's a mechanical waves and it needs molecules that basically crash into each other for it to be able
The
to move.
solid.
Which state of matter has the molecules closer together?
The solid.
Solid. I mean, clap your hands in the air. Listen to the sound. Do it now. Clap your hands. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, now put your ear on the table and knock on the table. Do it.
Do what?
Put your ear on on a table and knock on the table. Can you see the difference?
Yes.
Yes.
Which one sounded more forceful?
The knock on the table.
Knocking on the table. Knocking on the table. That's a little experiment that shows us how sound travels. And it travels better through a solid, definitely. Now, what do we use to, sound can be, I'm sorry, sound, I said, was a vibration. And these waves that I told you that are vibrating, they disturb the molecules in matter, and they can be recorded. There are two types of recording. They can be analog or digital. Regarding sound recording is an electrical or mechanical inscription or recreation of sound waves. We're recreating sound waves. The very first machine that was able to record sound was Thomas Edison's phonograph. Remember Thomas Edison? We spoke about him.
Yeah, I remember the
Well,
name.
he invented the phonograph that recorded sound, and it recorded on a drum that had something like, you know what aluminum foil is that your mommy uses in the kitchen to cover food and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically he had a drum with some foil. I think it was made of copper instead of aluminum, and it had like a needle that vibrated because of the sound waves, and it made an inscription on the drum. And he will put a needle with speakers connected to it and play it backward. And play it backward, you would hear the song being played back. Does anybody have any idea what the first song ever recorded was?
No.
Have you ever heard the song Mary Had a Little Lamb?
Yes.
Well, that was the first song ever recorded. Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Oh well.
So, as I was saying, sound can be recorded either with analog technology or digital technology. We say that it's analog when it's capturing sound in a way that represents all the possible frequencies. Or it can be digital when we're using computers to translate the sound into zeros or ones. Remember, everything that is digital is turned into a number, a zero or a one. They taught you that in technology, I think. And what that does when you record digitally, it's an approximation of what we're hearing, but it's created with digital information, zeros and ones. What do we use to record? Well, mostly microphones. You can record either via direct input or MIDI or MIDI, but we use microphones. And microphones can be either dynamic or condenser. Which one is the preferred one in cinematography? The condenser microphone. And it has a lot to do with the pickup pattern. For example, look at this microphone there. That type of microphone is very bad for recording sound for a movie. I know that this kind of microphone is the one that you see the most because that's the one they use in TV shows, right? And special activities. That is
Yeah.
omnidirectional. Omnidirectional means that it picks up sound from all directions. So if you're talking to an audience, that microphone is going to record what you're saying, but it's also going to record what is in front of you. And if you have people speaking in front of you, that's going to be picked up. If you have people speaking behind you or there's a noise behind you, that's going to be picked up too. So that will be pretty awful because you want your sound to be clean. You want your microphone to be unidirectional. In other words, that it picks up from only one direction, the direction in which you're pointing it to, okay? And that will be a condenser or shotgun microphone. In the industry, sound is recorded using the double system recording method. What that means is that sound is recorded separately from the film. That's not something I do because it's more complicated to do it that way, although it's the best way to do it, but it is much more complicated doing it that way. I'd rather record at the same time, I record sound at the same time that I'm filming the movie. Sometimes you have to obviously work separately on the sound, but if I'm recording like dialogue, I'd rather do it right there and then, unless I'm recording out there on a beach or something like that, where then I will have to like record sound separately. Because recording in a beach, guys, is horrific. If you want to have people talking in a beach or in places that are very noisy, that's gonna mess up your audio big time. You see that thing there? It's called a clapper. You've seen it many times. Does anybody know why it's used? I have a clapper, but I don't use it because I don't need it. You know what the use of the clapper is?
No.
And you're gonna
Okay,
start
people
filming.
think that it's
To start
because
a
to show when
film?
the movie's going to begin, but actually, what the clapper does, it makes a very loud sound, the clack, and what that does, it helps synchronize the soundtrack and the film after you record it. Because remember, you're recording them separately, and synchronizing sound is a lot of hard work, guys. Uh, but sometimes it needs to be done. So what that clapper does, it makes an initial sound where you can look at the film and see when the clapper is hitting the board, and you hear that clacking sound, and you can use that to begin synchronizing your film. And it will end up looking real good. It will not look like one of those horribly dubbed Hong Kong films. You know what I'm talking about, right? Those Hong Kong films that have very uh, horrible dubbing. Foley, this video is very cool. I hope you saw it because it's very cool. Foley is a reproduction of everyday sound effects that you add to your film in post production. Like for example, the famous punch sound. Have you ever seen a fight, a real fight, or been involved in one?
I've seen one.
Okay,
Yeah.
question. You see fight in movies all the time. When you saw the real fight, did the punches sound like the ones in the movies?
No.
Like
No.
like like that? Punches don't sound like that. But why do they sound that way in movies? That's because they are not really punches what they're recording. They're recording something else. And you'll probably see how they're recorded when you see this video. It's very funny. Dubbing is when you're re-recording a soundtrack. It's also known as ADR, additional dialogue recording. I have done that because I remember I made a movie called Relentless a while ago, and we were shooting inside a moving school bus. We recorded all the dialogue, and when we were playing it back, the sound was horrible. So we had to like sit the actors in front of the video. They will have to watch themselves talking, see the movement of their lips, and we record the dialogue all over again while they saw themselves talking. That was a lot of hard work, but it paid off because when you look at the movie, it looks good now. And we can also dub when you see movies that are they're recorded in one language, but you hear it on another. You see that a lot in maybe how many of you seen an American movie in Spanish?
Me, como lo dan en la televisión.
And it doesn't look very good, does it?
Nope. It doesn't.
No, it
Nah.
doesn't look very good. And I see movies from many countries. I see like movies made in China, movies made in Japan and Korea, movies made in Spain, movies made in France. And when they dub them and have them talking in English, it looks sometimes it looks pretty bad. I'd rather hear it in the original language and read the captions in a language I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, there's a reshoot that you were supposed to send, and that will be all for today. There's a bonus material here that you were supposed to watch from another video, and